Welcome to the Propreneur Podcast, where we help practice owners become better entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Dino. And welcome once again, everybody, to the Propreneur Podcast. Excited to have you here for another episode where we give you the best practices that you can actually have for your practice. And I want to thank everybody again for sharing the podcast to their friends and colleagues and helping us grow this podcast. I think we're another 120 some odd episodes in. And today's going to be a special one because we're actually going to be talking about some fun stuff. For those of you that don't know, I might have mentioned it on one of the podcasts out of all these podcasts, that for a short little time in my life, I actually tried stand-up comedy. I was in LA. I wanted to be a stand-up comedy. I didn't want to really be a stand-up comedian. I just wanted to have the experience of being on stage and doing comedy. And I thought it was kind of funny. So I figured I might try it. It was a great experience. Lots of fun. I got to poke fun at my mother-in-law, and who doesn't love to do that? And today we're going to go down that path a little bit with our special guest, Blaine Langberg. Now, Blaine came up to me after I spoke at an event and said, hey, so I'm a little different. I'm a dentist and orthodontist who actually does stand-up comedy. And I had actually never heard that before. So great, exciting time to talk to him. So everybody, please make sure you take notes, pay attention, and let's have some fun. Welcome, Blaine Langberg, to the show. Blaine, welcome.
Thanks, Dino. Great to be here. I appreciate the time to talk to you.
Absolutely. So I'm going to hold up your book first right here. For those of you that are watching on YouTube, if we've got, my camera's being all weird because it's looking for my face. There we go. That's better. The Journey of a JuBu is what the book is called. It was an American Fiction Awards winner and available on Amazon, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And so tell us the story of, well, first of all, tell us your story of being a tooth straightener, as you call yourself. And yes. And then we'll get into the story of how did that turn into stand-up comedy?
So I like to introduce myself as an orthodontist by day and then a comedian and an author at night. I've always had a funny dual personality in that even in college, I was a math major and an English minor. So I enjoyed like the problem solving aspects of math and, business and that aspect. And then on the side, I always love to read books and I just love a great story. Even before Netflix and binging was a thing, like I would watch a lot of TV coming home in the 80s. So when I was in dental school, as you can imagine, and some of your listeners I'm sure can relate, in professional schools, my time was so consumed with, classes during the day and then getting ready for clinic at night and patients and my patient presentation and speaking. And when I graduated, I found I had so much more free time. I was 30 years old before I had a real job. Wow. And I wanted, more outlets because school is intense. Like dental school and orthodontic is, try on the weekends to unwind, but it was consuming. So when I finished, I was getting more into TV shows, and the show Lost was popular, 24. Yeah. And but I wanted to do more than just consume entertainment. I felt like I could produce some. I felt like I had some stories brewing within me. So I began to take, and my wife would go to bed moderately early and I'd be used to staying up till 12 in the morning. So I was kind of a night owl. So after she would go to bed, pre-kids, I would write. So I actually wrote 2 screenplays, which they were a lot of fun, but that's a tough industry to kind of break into. So I tried to network, and I also was beginning to, have a little bit of a harder time with the balance between, work and a husband, and then being the dad now of 3 girls. At the time, the girls were coming one at a time. And I began to have a little bit of like mind body dysfunction, like sometimes some nervous twitches and feeling a lot of anxiety. And I kind of delved into that, some online searches, did the whole physical thing, making sure I didn't have any kind of things going on.
Neurological problems or anything.
Exactly. Yeah. So once I kind of eliminated that, I didn't have deeper neurological problems. I began to think, hey, I've got to get my mind more set. So I started learning about meditation, learning about sort of different religions and like where they intersected. I call it the Venn diagram
Sure.
of religion, that there must be a truth to that. And just kind of going through my own journey, I thought, you know what? I want to kind of document it, but not fully. So that's when I started my book called Journey of a JuBu. JuBu stands for Jewish Buddhist. So that was my foray. I pitch it as, Larry David meets the Buddha. So my comedic take of learning of a neurotic Jewish dentist searching for inner peace.
You don't seem as grumpy as Larry David. So
and it's true. That's like my alter ego. So
yeah, right.
I like to kind of have these characters and make it like funny and laughable.
Yeah.
And then so that's sort of the writing part. And then the comedy part came as it's another way to tell a story. In my town, there's a woman who does comedy classes, and people were kind of encouraging me to do that as another outlet. And that became a lot of fun. So I took a couple of those classes and then got the confidence up enough to do more gigs, and to kind of, some of my friends were producing some shows. So and that's how I actually came up to you afterwards, because you were really great, and you had a natural stage presence. And I thought, I could tell he's done some entertaining in addition to,
oh yeah,
the content you were telling us about. So
oh yeah, that's my world. I love that stage. By the way, I don't even know, where do you live?
I'm in a town called Ridgefield, Connecticut. So it's a suburb, about an hour 15 minutes from New York City.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Very good. So you get to go in and drive into New York and maybe go see some of those clubs out there too.
That's right.
Let me ask you, why did you get into orthodontics? What was the journey there? Was that just like kind of family thing? Was it something you've always wanted to do?
So when I was in college, I kind of had a midlife crisis when I was 21. I was, as I said, a math major and an English minor. And I always thought I would go into business. That was sort of a big thing. I went to Union College, and I ended up not interviewing very well at all. At the time, Anderson Consulting was a big company that would come to college. So I interviewed at Anderson Consulting and a couple of others, and I would get nervous and sweat. It was weird. It was almost like a subconscious reaction. And I didn't get any business offers. I got to second rounds and things like that. And I thought, I really need to regroup. Something is not really clicking with me and what I thought I would be doing.
Yeah.
So I ended up thinking, maybe something in the healthcare suited me more. So I began to research fields in medicine and dentistry. And then all of a sudden it clicked for me that orthodontics was, you could use your problem solving skills, you could use people skills, you had to be good at communication, you had to be good at running a business, your practice.
Yeah.
And also problem solving, moving teeth is it's problem in 4 dimensions, not
a lot
just
of math going on. Yeah.
Yeah. So so I ended up, it was funny. Once I told people I was thinking about it, they were like, you kind of look like a dentist. I got that a lot.
What does that mean? Oh, that's, well, what's interesting is the first thing that pops in my head about that is, as an orthodontist, especially, and I know it happens in dentistry too, but, really is there are a lot of challenges when it comes to perfectionism, because you're dealing with millimeters, right? And it's like, oh, that could be just a little bit more, and I could bring that out or widen that or straighten that. When it comes to being on stage, and especially in comedy clubs, there's not a lot of perfectionism that actually can happen. Now, you want to make sure you're hitting that timing correctly, but there's so many variables when you got people talking to you and hecklers or stage, that mic goes out, whatever. How much anxiety did that bring up for you when you think about it?
A very good point. Yeah. It's funny. I do sometimes struggle with that, because I'm a big, as you know, when I do cases in my practice, I'm a big outline everything. I have
to be set and loyal. Yeah, totally.
And I talk to my staff a lot, like, pretend you're the patient. We work in millimeters. You have to keep the workspace clean. It's a constant just going over our checks and balances. So on stage, you're right. Like, I outline things, I have them on note cards, and that I'm getting to that jump. So I'm better. I mean, like you said, I want to hit my points.
Yeah.
And sometimes I do beat myself up and get mad if, like, I miss part of the joke, but I realize you know what? It didn't matter. You're getting laughs, and I will go back and just like I'll review a case afterwards. I will review my comedy, tape it. And I'll be like, wait, that joke didn't even 100% make sense. But if you're engaged with people and they like you,
Yep.
they want to laugh, you'll still get the laugh. So I've learned there is some wiggle room, but sometimes it is frustrating when I'm not
It,
as perfect as I want to be. But
but it
you have to
actually
let it
makes
go.
me, it actually makes me think I should tell more of my doctor clients to take like an improv class or stand-up comedy class just to get out of that knowing of you have it's like being on a tightrope. You have no you need
Yeah.
perfection, but you have no idea when the wind's coming. You have no idea when your balance is gonna be off for a second, a bird flies in your face. Like
Yeah.
that's what it's like doing stand-up in that world. So let's talk about this transition from getting more into that centered. I love that you were actually self-aware enough to kind of think, all right, something's happening with my body physically. And so therefore I want to research that and find out what's up, find out if it's a neurological problem. It made me think of the book Thrive from Ariana Huffington. And that book starts with her waking up on the floor in her office and blood coming from her head. And her thinking what everybody would normally think is, oh my gosh, something must be wrong with me physically. So
Mm-hmm.
I got to go to every doctor and go get all the tests done and stuff. And come to find out, it wasn't anything actually physical. It was she was too tired. She hadn't taken care of herself. She was too stressed and overwhelmed in the anxiety. I think a lot of doctors probably suffer from that without knowing. And we immediately go to there's something wrong physically or even neurologically, but sometimes, and I guess it would be a neurological side of it of, all right, what if I just had more peace in my life? What if I was able to take some time for me? What if I was able to just not let that thing, not me, not care about that thing as much as I am? So let's talk about that journey a little bit for you of the reveal of the Buddhism, reveal of the peace and the inner peace that you found.
So I do talk about that in the book, within the characters. I say a lot of that does mirror my life in the book. The one of the characters sees a Buddhist coffee table book when he's out shopping, and I did have a similar experience, and I really connected with it. For me, if you don't know the story, the Siddhartha was the this prince back in ancient times, and so over what it was like 2,000 years before Jesus was even born. So he was born, and his father was going to give him all the riches, and he was going to inherit the kingdom, and he felt like anxiety and not peace. And even though he had all these riches, he said to his dad, I don't know if I want it, like this is not making me happy. Then he tried to get him married, gave him all the choices of the women in the kingdom, and he still wasn't happy. He finally got married, had a kid, and he ended up leaving the whole kingdom and kind of in search of this inner peace and this happiness. And I thought, my goodness, like if this prince at the time, famous prince, had it all, if he couldn't be happy, oh my God, how do us
Yeah, right.
mortals?
Jeez.
And his story was he unlocked what he called nirvana, sort of the inner
Mm.
peace, and he ended up going from the riches of the kingdom to actually like starving himself and living with the poor, to he ended up discovering sort of the middle pathway,
Mm.
and which I thought that's really cool, the middle pathway. And I really related to that because you're never going to have as much as you want, but still I don't think it's right to like eschew everything and say I don't want everything. That's not a realistic way to live, especially with
Sure.
a wife and family. I don't
Sure.
want to leave my family and go to a Buddhist monastery. So I thought, there's the middle way. I read a lot of different spiritual books, even books like 10% Happier by Dan Harris. There's gets a little bit more out there, but like Brian Weiss writes a really good book, Many Lives, Many Masters. So just sort of like listening to the universe, like listening to your body. And I really connected with that. And I started journaling a lot more, writing more. and I felt a little bit more in balance. Yeah,
Mm.
just trying to say. And listen, sometimes my wife sometimes jokes with me, you're a bad Buddhist when I'm fixating on things or
Frustrated or obsessing over something. Sure. Yeah.
that happened at the office and not letting it go. So as I tell her, I'm a Jewish Buddhist, a JuBu. So I'm
You still got to
still
be have that
growing.
neuroticism in it. It's got to be
Yeah,
a little neurotic there. I
exactly.
love that you said imbalance. Like that's a very interesting way to put it, that you're in balance as opposed to balancing. I've always struggled with that idea of balancing in the sense of like work-life balance, stuff like that, because it seems like a lot of work. It seems exhausting. I always picture those guys in the circus who get on the cylinder and balance on the cylinder and then climb the chairs and balancing on the cylinder. And they're working the entire time. And it just seems so exhausting. But imbalance is a really interesting way to put it. I'm in balance. I'm not balancing. I don't know. For me, that just makes it a little bit different. So very fascinating. All right. Tell me some of the struggles that you've had with this, trying to, like you just mentioned and alluded to your wife, of trying to be more in the Zen Buddhist space and yet living in the real world, living in a space where maybe other people around you aren't living as Zen and Buddhist as you are. And so
Yeah.
how do you deal with that?
I think my biggest struggle is control, like
Mm.
what I can control and then sometimes what gets out of control. And in a way, the practice is actually a really good sort of living example. So I don't consider myself super religious, and even because it can turn people off talking about like God or a higher power. So I'm a
Sure.
big believer, like we all have our own journeys, and whatever it is, that special energy is inside of us, and it's up to each of us to kind of find that to be the best person we can be.
Mm.
Um, so I would say a couple of things, just controlling things. Sometimes, you come in, and even like literally yesterday, I hired a new assistant. I'm super excited to have her. And she tells me I have a year and a half until I go to dental school. But then she tells me, well, I wasn't 100% accurate because I literally just found out over lunch I got into the one dental school I applied and I didn't think I was going to. So, there goes now a new search, right?
Wow.
So it's frustrating. But I do think, kind of learning from other people and learning from what I consider like the people who really became enlightened, whether it's the Buddha or Jesus or Moses or Muhammad, I consider or Mother Teresa, the people who really, there's certain themes that they always repeat, right? Which is like love, and things are constantly changing. That's the one thing that I really connected with in
Mm.
Buddhism is, nothing is permanent. And I
Yeah.
think running your orthodontic practice, I'm sure you see it with,
So
is
true.
that it's such a great example. Like, okay, I had a great team. We're now going to have to lose a little piece of that, and then we'll have to build it back up. So it is tiring. It can be frustrating. And sometimes I'm not the greatest with dealing with change, but I feel like, what, it's really good life lessons to continue to
That's awesome.
understand. Yeah.
How are you, besides comedy, are you speaking about this at dental and ortho events? How are you getting that word out there? Because I really do think it's one of those things where many people know it, right? There's nobody that you're going to talk to when, if you're to say, hey, do you realize that this is causing you more stress than is necessary, or you need to find more ways to have peace? I don't think anybody's out there going like, oh, this is news to me. This is fascinating. But it's the practice of it that makes it more challenging, right? So, which I would love to get into in just a moment of like, what are some specific things? But are you taking this message out to the world besides the stand-up comedy?
Not yet. I actually think that may be my next step in
Yeah.
life. And I would even love to collaborate, with you and chat about that more, because
Yeah.
um, it's funny because I have the book. It actually just came out as an audio book literally last week, so
Oh, wow.
I'm excited to promote that.
Yeah.
Um, but I haven't taken the next step of being sort of a teacher of it. I feel like I've consumed it and been a student for a while, and I would love and it's funny you mentioned that because I feel like I've been getting now a little bit more of opportunities to speak about it and get some platforms, but
Yep.
I haven't yet. It's been, again, we talk about it's been tough, running my business and balancing that with the home life and with the comedy, sort of an extra bonus for me. But I would love to, and I'm not afraid of speaking in front of people. So I would love to kind of use, the platform for my book intertwined. So I don't know where to go with it yet, to be completely honest with you.
I think it would be great. I think you need to put yourself out there. At the time of this recording, actually today is the last day. AAO is accepting applications for 2029 or 24. You should put yourself out there to apply to speak at all those, especially the industry events. Listen, I think there's definitely some credibility of you being able to say, number one, I'm one of you. I'm an orthodontist. Here's where I was. Here's what I found. And this is now what I'm doing. Like having that type of structure for some sort of speech is something a lot of people know. Yes, we need to know the clinical stuff. Yes, we need to know the business side of things, but you have the credibility to doing that. Writing a book alone, if anybody's ever tried to write a book or sat down to write a book, they know like there's some real discipline in doing so. And having that book alone is a huge credibility piece. Then adding that on top of being an orthodontist and doing the stand-up. I mean, I bet you could do a killer speech that would just make people laughing and enjoying themselves and realizing, and plus with lessons, as you saw with what I do, is my whole thing is the edutainment part of it, right? I want to have a lot of fun because it's going to spark your brain. When we're laughing, we're learning, but also add the message in there, not overwhelming message, but 3-4 bullet points that make people go, oh, wow, I never thought about it that way. So that'd be great. I'd love to hear about a little bit of your routine, about how do you keep it front of mind? Do you have a regimen, a routine that you do to try to really keep that practice of peace happening for you?
So are you meaning daily routine as far as
daily, even weekly, but daily, like how do you keep it top of mind?
Meaning the orthodontics, the comedy, or just
comedy, the peace of mind, the comedy part. Yeah. Bringing that, because our lives are so chaotic, right? Everything's trying to pull us to chaos, I think, on a continual basis. So how are there, and maybe there aren't any routines that you do?
I would say there are, obviously I'm not a big wake up early kind of guy. I am more of a night owl.
Well, because you're up till 1 a.m. So that's
true sometimes with the shows. So I feel like a couple of things keep me a little bit more sane. So I do like to work out. I'm a runner. I'm still a consumer of entertainment. So I usually have a show kind of that I'm watching. Sometimes my wife and I will kind of lock into a show together, or I'll go downstairs to the man cave and do a show on my own. We kind of both are good about that. We will be together, but we also unwind separately, which I think is healthy. And then I have to admit, sometimes I'm better than others, but when I will try and take out a notebook and write some jokes. I'll give you an example. Even speaking of running, if something funny happens to me that I feel like I can relate to, I will write it down. And even for running, I joked the turkey trot, the 5K in town. Yeah. So I made a new joke there where I ran the turkey trot, and people say they're slow, but I say it and mean it. I'm being there, and I was running really hard, and my wife's cousin who told me, oh, I'm slow too, like passes me like while he's running backwards, like, oh, you really are slow. I thought you were joking. Yeah. And all of a sudden we finished the first lap, and I'm like, oh my God, thank God. I ran that faster than I thought. And the announcer's like, congratulations, you're halfway through, 1 lap to go. And then by the end, I'm being passed by, literally the fourth grade girls basketball team, sure. Granddads walking their grandkids, and a 3-legged dog. So things like that, like I will write down and kind of keep my routine fresh. I have my old, sort of my classics that I know work. And
so you do a lot. Like you're just observing a lot of the things that are happening in your own life. How does, there's a lot of stuff that happens in ortho offices. Do you ever bring in any of that into your comedy too, when it comes to, I'll give you an example. I used to years and years and years ago, I used to be a makeup artist in Hollywood. That's I did a lot of in that realm. And I used to talk about how, I'm a makeup artist, not a plastic surgeon. And people come in and asking you to do this stuff. I'm like, I can only work with what I got. Like not magic. There's a lot of people I know that have demands. There's staff issues, challenges that pop up. Do you use any of that in your comedy as well?
I not fully, like I haven't given myself 100% permission to delve into that fully, but I'm dipping my toes a little bit. I mean, I do. My opening joke is, is that this is what you need to know about me. I live with my wife, my 3 daughters. I work with 8 women at my orthodontic office. If you're slow on the math, that's 12. It's like a course in estrogen immersion therapy.
No.
And so I do kind of funny things like that.
Oh my gosh, it's so true. They're all on when they all get on their cycles together. It's just a thrill for me. Yeah, absolutely. It's like
I warn them that I have PMS tonight. This week is bad, so they'll have to be patient if I'm a little cranky.
Oh, that's funny. That's great.
Yeah. So
awesome.
I haven't completely, I don't like tease about patients or things like that, but I will bring up funny observations. A patient comes back who I haven't seen in 5 years and is like, "Hey, Dr. Langberg, I see you lost all your hair." And I'm like, "Hey, Seymour, whose name has been changed for HIPAA compliant reasons.
Sure.
Be careful, because one day your Jewish afro is going to, disappear from your head and come on your back. So, and obviously that hasn't happened, but I take a little bit of humor.
Sure. Take some fun with that. Why not? Hey, look, I think people in general, I always say is people are weird. We're all weird. So to be able to take people and the situations of unawareness, some of the funniest comedy for me is just not only the situational, but the true, right? When people can see themselves and laugh at themselves of like, yeah, I totally do that. Right. That's what we love about comedy so much. So what's been
a quick question, Dino?
Sure. Yeah.
So this is interesting because I have drawn a little bit of a line. I've had a number of patients who are, and parents who've not usually adult patients and also parents who've seen me and they're like, "Oh my, you're different than when you're in the orthodontic office. Like you're not who I expected." And I do have that line, right? I mean, when you don't want to see your orthodontist, like, I guess too silly and funny. So I don't know how you feel about that.
No way. I think if that the branding of you of being able to do that and be like, no, I am going to be silly and funny. I think the more people know you and are connected with you, the better. I mean, you look at people who've done that very famously of Dr. Kim Jong, like he's done this as a doctor and stand-up comedy. And then I remember, and I don't know if it was him, because back when I was in LA, I used to go to comedy clubs all the time. It was part of Shannon's and my routine of date nights and stuff. And I remember seeing and this is so stereotypical, but I remember seeing an Asian guy who was a doctor who would stand up on stage. I don't think it was him because he wasn't as outlandish. He was a little more buttoned up, but he was the doctor of medicine and did stand up. I think I say this, whether you're doing stand up or not, and this is for anybody listening, I think it's really important for people to know and get to know who you are as a human being, because we buy from people that we are connected with, and we will be more apt to being a partner in the treatment when we're actually friends and friendly and getting to know you. I always find it interesting on people's websites where it's like the about us thing. And it's typically a list of all the places you've gone to school and all the boards you're a member of. No one cares. Like, I'm assuming you're a doctor because you have an actual certificate on the wall, you have a website, and I'm going to trust that you're a doctor. Yep. Every once in a while we get those news stories of somebody who is like, they said they were a doctor, but they just printed it off on the internet. But I would rather that get to know me or that about us page be, hey, one thing is, Dr. Langberg, he is funny or he thinks he's funny enough to be a comedian. So, he's and showing little clips of your comedy. I bet that would really connect with people. I also think that there's a power in you being able to use, again, what people already know about themselves or their human behavior, not in a demeaning way, but in a funny way. This is the reason why we love stand-up comedians who do marriage stuff, because almost all the marriage stuff, even if there's no one up there talking about, there's no stand-up comedies that I know of that are up there talking about their open marriage, right? They're not talking about their polygamous family. They're talking about marriage, how we all understand it, because it's the most common thing of like, yep, when my wife does this, I do this, or we react like this and she reacts like that. And we all can find that truth in it, because all comedy, great comedy, is based in truth. So how do we act when we go into an appointment? The questions that parents ask that are just ridiculous, or kids that ask that are just asinine, of like, oh, I'm supposed to brush every day. I thought it was just an annual thing, right? Like stuff that help us understand we're all silly, right? So no, I think you doing that would be awesome.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a good point. I find sometimes I get in a little trouble if I, maybe joke too much, or kind of, that sometimes has shocked me. So I've been like, okay, let me pull back a little bit.
Well, think about it this way. This is how the last thing I'd say about that is that, in my opinion, if your comedy is too much about you, then it starts to be not as relatable as if it's about your life experience that I can understand too. If you were just to talk about, teeth all the time, or how crazy it is that people live their life with a gap in the front and they don't see how terrible that looks, or how you're obsessed over it. I mean, that might get to a point of going like, all right, great. That's you find that funny, but I don't see that's funny at all. But if you're talking about the realistic way that we all see, like, okay, I might be obsessed over your teeth, but what are you obsessed? We're all obsessed about something. Some of you are obsessed about my hairline. Some of you are obsessed about, the height or the size or whatever. It just gives us more of a well-rounded conversation.
Yeah, that's a good point.
In my opinion. Anyways.
Yeah.
Well, what's the feedback been about your book? I'd like to know, like, how's the reception been about the book and how people are reacting to it. You got some great endorsements on the book.
I think for me, the gift of the book has been the people I've been able to meet along the way and the connections it's given me. I'll give you two stories, which are, to me, just make it worthwhile. I submitted it to this website called the readersfavorite.com. And I got this amazing review. This guy really connected with the book. He said, you know what? I love how when the characters speak, because it's a lot heavy in dialogue, but he said, through their talking, the author's teaching you lessons. So I said, wow, this guy really, and he said, it's like a modern day parable where I'm trying to teach you like what I learned about meditation and mindfulness, but yet through these funny, goofy Seinfeldian characters. And I said, okay, I want to ask this guy for permission to use some of his quotes for my marketing. So I found him on Facebook, messaged him. Turns out I was lucky. I was literally on my lunch break. He calls me like from Facebook, and he's like, oh, I'd love to chat. I'm free now. And all of a sudden this black guy comes on with like these dreadlocks. He's smoking an e-cigarette. He's like, oh, I was like, oh my God, where are you from? He's like, oh, I'm from the Philippines. And he goes, I bet you didn't think I was your demographic. And he's from Africa, and he works in the Philippines now. He's in tech. And I said, I'll have to be honest with you. You weren't completely my demographic. Like,
right.
Usually and he was younger too. And I said, usually like I wrote it when I was 40. It was like my mid 40s, like midlife crisis buddies, white Jewish guys like the book. He's like, sure. I really connected with it. There's something universal in the struggle between, between, mind, body, and kind of feeling centered and wanting peace. Sure. So I said, this is awesome. So I thought, what a great experience. I got to kind of chat with this guy who I'm sure I'd be buddies with him, but I wouldn't think that he could relate to my journey. And I thought that was awesome.
That's
Yeah.
totally my point, is that the relatability of this is that, look, this could be journey of a Mobu, right? I'm Mormon Buddhist, right? Like it could be, there's so many ways that you can go about this, and the human experience is the human experience, and that you wrote about this experience that somebody in the Philippines, somebody in Africa, somebody in China can relate to, because everybody relates to being overwhelmed, looking for a little more inner peace, having stress, frustration. And quite honestly, not a lot of men are talking about this. So that adds a whole nother layer to it. So you said you had
Yeah.
two stories. What's the second one?
It was a woman. So I have two moms bring their children to me, and I was telling her about my comedy and giving her my book, and yeah, like a month went by, and she said, "I have to tell you, like I completely related to the struggle of the character, and between like doing the housework, and then when my partner comes home, just having to balance that." She goes, "I was just cracking up because." And I thought that's really cool. Again, somebody not thinking it is my demographic. It was just amazing. And she actually is a big pop culture person. So we always talk about TV shows. So I knew she'd like the pop culture stuff in the book,
Nice.
but it was cool that you connected to just the struggles. And I would say that to me, it's been a little disappointing in that it's been hard to get the book out there.
Mm,
I would say that's probably my one toughest issue is I'm not quitting my day job
right.
anytime soon, but obviously I have as you know, a passion for storytelling and for the book, and it's been hard to like get people to get it. And it was cool because she was telling me that you should be on the beach reading it, and people would walk by and be like, that's a cool cover. What is that about?
Yeah.
So I think I have something there, but it has been a little bit of a bummer to, and people told me this too, it's tough. Everybody writes a book and wants it out there. And I did self-publish it. That came with kind of a fun learning experience and
Sure.
struggles.
Yeah.
But I mean, I appreciate the platform, just chatting with you and trying to get it out there more, because I feel like people could connect with it.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And
yeah.
and I would highly recommend you reach out to a lot of podcasts, and just and do more podcasts, create your own podcast. But speaking is going to be the way to get it out there too, because
Right.
letting people know stand-up's great, but most people are going to come to a stand-up club to think they're going to buy a book afterwards, right? So speaking allows you to, when people don't have a budget to pay you, hey, but would you like to buy some of my books at a little more than my cost, or can we get this out to people? I have a different marketing platform for what I do. Is I typically give my book out for free because I self-published it too. It's not very expensive. It's a business card to me. But
Mhm.
to be able to get more and more platforms, more and more virtual events, more and more webinars, to put it out there and let people know it's there, that's the way it's going to do it. And I would start doing, I don't know, how old's your youngest?
Fifth grade, 10 years old.
Okay, so you have some little ones in the house that probably understand how
Yeah.
to do things like Instagram and TikTok better than you.
Yeah.
This is great material for a TikTok to talk about. There's a whole thing, book talk on TikTok. There's Instagram people that are all around books. I would get out there and just start using that. It's for me, it's not even a matter of making money off of the book. It's a matter of getting it out there, right? And letting people know, because it's
Yeah.
unique. It's a different spin. It's fun. It's funny. Yeah, I think that you have an opportunity to do that for sure. So
Well,
market the
thank
heck out of it.
you.
Marketing. Do you promote it in the office, in the practice?
Subtly. I mean, we have the books being shown, and we and then once in a while somebody will ask, but I
Like,
don't
it's
do.
is it in the waiting room, like, hey,
Yeah.
check out Doctor's brand new book or whatever? Is that there? Yeah.
Yeah, we have it in the reception room where people can see it.
I might even do some quote cards, like some funny quotes that are in there, like this is from Doctor's book or whatever, and
Oh,
show that off. But yeah, that'd be a really fun way to do it.
that's a
Well,
good idea. Yeah.
this is really fun. You've done a great job with it. It's something that I know a lot of people out there thinking, man, I should write a book. And it's hard to get people just to write a book, let alone promote it, get it out there, publish it. So congratulations on that. That's really great.
Thank you. I mean, you know how it is. I think my advice would be, just, make some time. I know it is harder, easier said than done, but
Sure.
even a half hour a day of writing, and it'll
Yep.
clear your head, and just give it some time. And I took a lot of courses. I don't, that's been
Oh,
fun
good.
for me. There's something called the Westport Writers Workshop, but Westport is a town near Ridgefield.
Mm.
So again, they're putting myself out there, meeting like really cool, interesting people, and kind of getting the story out. And it took
Yep.
7 years to write, so it wasn't like it was overnight.
Yeah.
But
No, I get it.
yeah.
How long did your audiobook take to record?
So I didn't record it. I actually hired a company. So
Smart.
I tried it, and I was too monotone. And there's a lot of characters in the book, and I
Yeah.
don't do voices very well.
Yeah.
So I think it's one of these, like you talk in your book, kind of knowing your limitations and knowing what to delegate. So I found a company, and it was really funny. At first, I was a little frustrated because they were having like people from the South being like, and my daughter's bat mitzvah. I'm like, okay, you don't pronounce it like that. But we finally found one guy who was Michael Kirby. He was great. He's actually a voice coach at NYU, and he was really good with the
That's cool.
characters. Yeah. So
I'll tell you, if I ever do an audiobook again, I'm hiring it out. I often joke about how I feel like doing the audiobook took longer than writing the book because because I was so particular about how I wanted it to sound. And luckily I have a best friend who has his own recording studio, so I could go in there anytime I want in his house and do it. So I did it slow going, but yeah, it's like, geez, because I wouldn't just read it. I'd want to sound like I'm talking to you in a car next to you. And I was so particular about it. I won't do that again. But yeah, it's great. Well, I got to tell you, Dr. Langberg, it was awesome having you on the show and you sharing your experience with us. And hopefully you've inspired some people that, whether it be stand-up, whether it be writing a book, whether it be doing something just different, that's you, that gives you that inner peace. That's what it's all about, is finding that other thing. You're not just the orthodontist. You're not having to only do that all day long and only focus on that. You're a whole, a well-rounded, holistic human being. So
yeah,
love that. Well, tell me, where can everybody get? They get Amazon. Is there any other places that they can get the book and find out more about you?
Yep. So there is a website, journeyofajuboo.com. And there's a link to Amazon. You could also get it at like bookstore.com or Barnes and Noble. So that's what I learned too. If you go to local bookstores, they don't want to tell them it's on Amazon. So they're actually something called Ingram Sparks, which is they get through bookstores. So we got it on both platforms. There's a website called amplify.com, which you could get the audiobook on. It will be on Audible, but not for another month. They actually now need to kind of get approval, and Amazon is behind in that. So I would love for everybody to check it out and tell their friends. And like you said, I mean, I'm happy to speak to book clubs and anybody. I enjoy. I have a passion for discussing the story and getting it out there.
Well, I was going to say, like, for any of you out there that are organizing any type of study clubs, events, reach out, because we want to look for speakers who are also going to be a little different, bring something new and unique to the meeting. And you can reach out also and BlaineLangberg.com as well, right? So BlaineLangberg.com and Journey of a JuBu, both of those work well.
So you can do the email address, or braceyourselves.com is my practice email address.
Oh, okay, cool.
Do that. Or drlangberg@yahoo.com.
Awesome.
I'd be fine with. And then, like you said, it's funny because kind of putting myself out there to speak with you was a big step, and I appreciate the opportunity.
I'm glad you did.
Yeah.
I'm glad you did. Well, put yourself out there more, because people need to hear this, and it's a great message. And for those of you listening and spent this last 50 minutes with us, thank you so much for being here again on the Propreneur Network. And our podcast here is all about helping you learn the best practices for your practice. And this is one of those things that I'm really passionate about, finding something that brings you joy, brings you peace, and helps you be a better practitioner, better team member, if you will. And as always, to find more passion, purpose, and profit inside of your business. So thanks everybody for listening. Thanks again, Dr. Langberg.
Thanks, Dino. Pleasure. It's a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thanks so much again for listening to the Propreneur Podcast. We really appreciate your support. If you haven't subscribed already, please make sure you do so. Also, if you feel like you might be a good fit for our podcast as a guest or know somebody who you think would be, go ahead and email us at dino@dinowatt.com. Again, thanks for support. We'll see you on the next episode.